Hello and welcome to Sleepy Story. Tonight, we're stepping into a question that unites almost every dreamer on Earth, the mysterious dream of falling. Before we begin, let me ask, where are you listening from tonight? Are you curled beneath a blanket, drifting beside a quiet window, or lying awake under a sky of your own thoughts? Wherever you are, know that you're part of a small circle of listeners scattered across the globe, joined together by curiosity and calm. If you find these late-night explorations meaningful, a gentle like or a quiet subscribe helps me continue making them. To those who already support this channel, thank you. Your presence here is the reason these stories can breathe. I should also offer a small warning. This story might be too interesting to sleep through. If you find yourself awake a little longer, perhaps that is not such a bad thing. You'll drift off having learned something new and carry a fragment of wonder into tomorrow. Now, let us begin. You have felt it before. The sudden lurch, the shock that tears you out of slumber, heart racing, breath caught, body shivering as though gravity itself betrayed you. It is so common that it has a name, the hypnic jerk, a dream of falling, a moment when the floor disappears, the cliff edge crumbles, the step you were taking finds no ground beneath it. You wake with a jolt, sometimes with a gasp, sometimes clutching the sheets. Why does this happen? And more haunting still, why does it happen to almost all of us, across all cultures, across all ages? Science gives us one answer. As the body drifts from wakefulness into sleep, the muscles relax. Sometimes the brain misinterprets this relaxation as danger, as if the body were collapsing or slipping. In response, it sends a signal, a violent contraction of muscles, a protective jerk, an imagined fall. In evolutionary terms, it may be a relic from when our ancestors slept in trees. A brain that misfired with a false alarm was better than a brain that let a sleeper tumble into the dark. But science, with all its clarity, does not capture the whole experience. Because the dream of falling is not just a twitch of muscle, it is a story. We fall from mountains, from towers, from the sky itself. We plunge through darkness that seems endless. We know the feeling of descent, the rushing air, the fear, and sometimes the strange calm before waking. Why should a survival reflex dress itself in such vivid costumes? Why should the brain choose falling and not floating, not flying, not simply sinking into stillness? Cultures across the world have asked this. To the ancient Greeks, falling dreams symbolized hubris, a punishment for reaching too high. To some traditions in India, they reflected spiritual imbalance, a soul losing its footing. In modern psychology, falling dreams are linked to insecurity, loss of control, fear of failure. Even these interpretations do not explain the intensity, the way a falling dream can feel more real than reality. Perhaps the answer lies in what falling means to us as humans. Falling is surrender. Falling is helplessness. Falling is transformation. To fall is to cross from one state to another, from sky to ground, from stability to chaos, from control to release. No wonder the unconscious chooses this symbol when it wants to speak in urgency. No wonder it appears so often in nights of stress, transition, or fear. And still, the mystery deepens. Because there are falling dreams that end before impact. You wake just before you hit the ground. But there are others, rarer, stranger, where you do not wake. You strike the ground and the dream continues. You fall and then you walk in a new place. The fall is not an ending, but a doorway. What does it mean then when the dream refuses to let you escape? In this story, across the chapters that follow, we will walk carefully through this mystery. We will look at science, at psychology, at the echoes of myth, and at the personal poetry of the fall. We will ask whether falling is a warning, a rehearsal, a symbol, or a passage. We will ask whether waking before the ground is safety, or whether the truer dream begins only after we land. And as we step deeper, we will keep one question close. When you fall in a dream, who catches you? The ground, your own body, or something else altogether. You are drifting. The room grows soft, sounds blur at the edges, and the body begins its surrender to sleep. For a moment, everything is still. Then suddenly, impact. Your leg kicks, your arm jerks, your whole body jolts awake. Heart pounding, you lie there, confused. Nothing has happened, and yet everything has. You dreamed of falling. Scientists call this a hypnic jerk, a term as plain as the experience is dramatic. It is the twitch, the startle, the sudden spasm of muscle that rips you from the threshold of sleep. Everyone knows it, though not everyone remembers it clearly. Some only recall the body's movement. Others recall the accompanying dream, the stumble on a stair, the loose branch breaking, the slip from a cliff edge. Always, the sensation is falling. Why falling? Why not floating, flying, or fading? The answer, according to biology, lies in survival. Millions of years ago, our ancestors did not sleep safely in beds. They slept in trees, on ledges, in places where a moment's slip meant death. The brain learned to interpret the body's relaxation as potential danger. When muscles released their grip, the brain sometimes panicked. "You are falling!" It fired an emergency signal. Muscles contracted violently. The dreamer awoke with a lurch. Safe, startled, alive. The falling dream may be a fossil, a survival instinct buried in the nervous system. Even now, long after we traded branches for beds, the reflex remains. The brain, ever cautious, errs on the side of alarm. Better to startle awake unnecessarily than to fall asleep forever. But biology does not explain everything. If it were merely muscle and reflex, why the stories? Why do we see cliffs, towers, staircases? Why do we sometimes feel air rushing against our skin, hear the whistle of descent, sense the inevitable ground below? Reflex alone cannot paint such vivid pictures. Here, psychology enters. Dreams are storytellers, and when the body twitches, the mind weaves a tale to justify it. The leg kicks, and the brain says, "You must have slipped." The arms flail, and the brain says, "You must have fallen." It invents scenery to match sensation. Falling becomes the chosen script because falling is one of the most primal fears, engraved in us since infancy, when the loss of support meant peril. The unconscious chooses falling because falling means danger, and danger demands awakening. Still, there is mystery even in the science. Not every hypnic jerk comes with a falling dream, and not every falling dream comes with a jerk. Sometimes we descend in silence, smoothly, slowly, drifting toward ground we never reach. Sometimes the fall is endless, and we wake not with a spasm but with a sigh. If biology alone explained the fall, would we not all wake the same way? With the same jolt, the same gasp? Perhaps the truth is layered. The reflex is ancient, a gift from ancestors clinging to branches. The stories are modern, embroidered by the mind to make sense of the twitch. Together they form a bridge between body and imagination. Science gives us the mechanics, but the experience is greater than mechanics. It is biology wearing the robes of myth. This duality is important. Falling dreams are not only accidents of nerves, they are windows into how mind and body collaborate. The body twitches, the mind writes. The nervous system panics, the imagination creates. Falling dreams show us that dreaming is not passive watching. It is active creation, sparked by signals from within. To fall in a dream is to witness the dialogue between flesh and story. And perhaps this is why the dream of falling feels universal. Because the fear of falling belongs not to one culture, not to one century, but to the species. Whether you are a child in a modern city, a hunter sleeping beneath stars, or a sailor rocking in a hammock, the sensation is the same. Gravity always waits. The ground is always near. Falling is the story written into our bones, and so it becomes the story written into our dreams. But then comes the deeper question. If science explains the reflex, Why do we fall in dreams at times when no reflex fires at all? Why do we sometimes continue the fall without waking? Why do some of us land, rise, and continue the dream as if falling was only the beginning? Here, biology falls silent, and psychology shrugs, and the mystery opens wider. Science gives us reflex and nerves, but science does not explain why the dream of falling feels so heavy with meaning. When we dream of falling, it is rarely neutral. It carries weight, fear, helplessness, release, or even strange peace. Dreams do not speak in words, they speak in symbols. And falling is among the oldest, deepest symbols we know. Think of falling as the opposite of control. In waking life, to stand upright is victory, to balance is to survive. Every step is a small triumph over gravity. Falling undoes this. It strips away mastery. It throws us into a state where nothing answers to will. This is why falling dreams so often visit us when life itself feels unstable. A job is uncertain, a relationship shakes, health trembles. Our unconscious takes these invisible drops and transforms them into the visible story of descent. Psychologists often point to falling dreams as signs of insecurity, fear of failure, or anxiety about control. A student overwhelmed by exams dreams of missing a step. An adult fearing loss of work dreams of plunging from a tower. A heart afraid of rejection dreams of tumbling through air, arms reaching for a hand that never comes. Falling becomes the body's way of saying what the mouth cannot. It externalizes what is too heavy to say aloud. But the symbol of falling is not always negative. To fall can also mean to surrender, to fall into sleep, to fall in love, to fall into trust. These are not losses, but gifts. Falling can mean letting go of tension, of walls, of the exhausting need to stand upright at all times. Some who dream of falling report not terror, but serenity, a weightless calm that carries them into new landscapes. For them, the fall is a release, a baptism into change. Cultures have recognized both sides. Ancient myths often spoke of falling as punishment. Icarus flew too close to the sun and fell. Lucifer fell from heaven. Towers crumble, empires collapse, pride is punished by gravity. But mystics spoke differently. To fall was to descend into deeper knowledge. Shamans spoke of journeys downward into underworlds, not as death, but as initiation. Descent was not disgrace, but transformation. In some traditions, the seeker must fall before they can rise. Perhaps this duality explains why falling dreams remain so powerful. They embody both our greatest fears and our deepest desires. The terror of losing control and the longing to let go. They show us that surrender and failure are not far apart, that descent can mean ruin or rebirth. Which meaning is chosen depends on the dreamer, on the moment of life, on the willingness to see falling not only as end, but as beginning. And then there are the dreams where the fall never ends. No ground appears. You plunge through sky, through darkness, through infinity itself. These dreams may reflect the feeling of endless uncertainty, the sense of drifting without anchor, but they may also reflect the truth that not all descents end in destruction. Some continue forever, journeys into depth rather than doom. So next time you fall in a dream, ask, is this a punishment or an invitation? Is it fear dragging you down or trust releasing you into something greater? The symbol is wide enough to hold both, and that is why it endures. Long before anyone named the hypnic jerk or charted sleep stages on quiet machines, people understood that the dream of falling carried a gravity beyond muscle and reflex. Villagers learned it by firelight, temples learned it by incense and stone. Mothers knew it by the way a child woke with a cry, arms lifting for a presence that would catch them. The world has always told the same secret in different languages. A fall in the night is never only a drop through air. It is a message, a rehearsal, a summons, a boundary crossed and remembered only by feeling. And when we forget the details, old stories remember for us, holding the meanings while we sleep. Imagine a traveler in a distant century, closing tired eyes beneath a roof of reeds. In the dream, the traveler is high in the sky, the body light, the heart bursting with a happiness that feels like dawn. Feathers tremble, heat gathers. A sweetness turns to peril almost tenderly. The wings shine, then soften, then loosen into separate feathers that flutter uselessly. And the long, bright fall begins. The sea opens its arms. Even without a word, the mind knows the pattern that civilization carved into memory. The rise that exceeded measure, the descent that teaches measure again. The dreamer wakes with the lesson burning but not cruel, as if the wind itself had spoken about balance. Elsewhere, centuries later, the same falling is woven to a different loom. A monk sleeps on stone. In the narrow dream above him, a brilliance shines wider than eyes can bear, and from that brilliance a figure tumbles, burning without smoke, turning without end, falling from radiance into a silence that feels like distance that cannot be crossed. The monk wakes with the taste of exile in his mouth and cannot name it except through a story older than his own life. Here the fall is not a slip of pride, but a casting out, a reminder that belonging can be lost, that light is not a guarantee, that love is not a possession, but a grace that must be carried carefully. The same falling. A different chord struck in the same instrument. Somewhere in a forest without bells or walls, a sleeper slides into a darker passage. Roots curl from the ceiling like constellations drawn in earth instead of sky. The fall is slow, almost ceremonial, as though the soil itself were lowering the dreamer with reverence. Water glows where no sun can reach. A voice that is not a voice tells what the body already knows. There are truths that can be learned only by going down. The dreamer returns carrying a small memory like a warm stone in the hand. The tribe listens, not because the dream is entertaining, but because they too must eat and sing and heal, and the fall has fetched something useful from below. The world keeps repeating itself in different costumes, down the rabbit hole and into nonsense that is not nonsense, down through cave mouths painted with animals that still run beneath the skin of time, down the stair that is longer than the tower it hides inside, down into a city beneath the city, where lanterns never go out and strangers know your name. A fall, again and again, taking the dreamer where walking cannot. Every culture tells it, every life receives it. The mind does not only invent, it also remembers what the species has been telling itself for as long as voices have carried in the dark. If falling were only danger, the story would be simpler, but dreams dislike simple. They prefer to hold contradictions in both hands. The drop can punish hubris and also invite surrender. It can warn against climbing too fast and also encourage release from whatever the mind grips past usefulness. Consider how ordinary speech keeps this double truth alive. We fall asleep, we fall in love, we fall into place. None of these are failures, they are entrances. So it is no surprise when a dream carries a terror that softens mid-air into relief, when the stomach's lurch gives way to a softness like water, and the ground that should have shattered becomes a surface that accepts you without harm. The body wakes and cannot explain the calm, only feels it moving through the day like a quiet river under streets. There are nights when the fall never ends. Sky yields to deeper sky. Darkness becomes velvet rather than pitch. The body is not a body, but a point of awareness traveling through a shaft without walls. In those dreams, time loses its edges. The dreamer wakes, not frightened, but widened, as if the night has lent a little of its thought to the morning. Perhaps those are the descents that do not belong to punishment or rescue. Perhaps they belong to scale, to the reminder that a single life rides inside distances that cannot be measured by clocks. We inherit myths, not to be ruled by them, but to be accompanied through experiences that arrive whether we believe in myths or not. The dream of falling came before each of us and will go on after, always carrying both warning and blessing. When the mind is raw with ambition, the dream may borrow the sun and melt our wings to spare us something worse. When the mind is scraped by loss, the dream may open its trapdoor to let us descend where tenderness still grows in the dark. When the mind mistakes control for safety, the fall returns with the education of gravity. It knows how to teach without humiliating, how to shock without breaking, how to end in a place that gives something back. Some mornings, the dream leaves behind only an object, a feather on the tongue that dissolves into taste without name, a scent like cold stone after rain, sand inside a shoe that does not exist in the room. The conscious mind shrugs and goes about its tasks, but the object carries instruction. Walk softer today. Watch for heat that feels like praise and might be risk. Bend the knees when you land from even small heights. Call the friend you dreamt you lost before the day becomes loud. The myths have couriers smaller than stories. What about those nights when we do not wake before impact? When the old rumor that one cannot die in dreams proves itself untrue, and the ground arrives and takes us, and the dream goes on. The floor breaks like a thin layer of ice, and the fall continues into another room. The cliff yields to water, and the body swims away as though this were what it wanted all along. In these rare visits, the dream acts out a secret that daytime rarely admits, that endings and beginnings share the same breath. Impact does not always mean catastrophe. It can mean entry. It can mean a change of medium. It can mean, very simply, that falling has other work to do beyond frightening us awake. To carry myths is to risk mistaking them for laws. Icarus is not a statute against joy. Lucifer is not a statute against desire. Descent to the underworld is not a statute against climbing. The dream is kinder than law. It is more precise, more tailored. It knows when you need caution and when you need encouragement, when you need a firm hand on the shoulder, and when you need someone to take the ladder away so that you remember you can float. The same image arrives to two people and is not the same. One makes a vow to slow down. One buys a ticket to somewhere new. Both are right because the night understands context. Perhaps this is why the most enduring falls in stories end not with bodies, but with understanding. The figures who return from below speak differently. They choose words with more care. They do not stop fearing cliffs, but when they meet someone who has fallen, they know how to hold silence without making it heavier. A good dream teaches the dreamer, and the taught dreamer becomes a teacher without preaching. The circle continues: descent, learning, ascent, telling, listening, and then descent again when telling is not enough. Sometimes the fall belongs to a people rather than a person. Entire generations dream of elevators that stop between floors, of flights cancelled by weather that never clears, of maps that change while you are looking. These are not only private anxieties, they are barometers. They measure the pressure of a culture moving too quickly or not quickly enough, or in directions that leave the body behind. When many people wake with the same dream, the myth feels its old duty rising. It becomes public health in the language of symbol. It knocks on city doors that cannot hear words and leaves a feeling strong enough to reach policy by long routes. The border between dream and waking is policed by forgetting, and forgetting is skilled at its job. Still, the myths find ways to smuggle meaning through. A fragment of melody that makes you choose the slower lane. An image of a ladder missing the fourth rung that persuades you to write the message you have postponed. A taste of salt on the upper lip that makes you check the weather a second time before you sail. The night never insists, it invites. It repeats only when we refuse the invitation enough times to make repetition a kindness. Picture the moment that comes to almost everyone who keeps a notebook by the bed. There is a night when the fall returns for the 8th time, the 10th, the 12th, and at last, the dreamer chooses to stop mid-air. Not to fight the gravity, not to reach for the sun that is too near, but to turn the face toward the wind and look. Something happens when we look while falling. The rush of air becomes a sound we can tell apart from fear. The ground becomes a surface with detail rather than an enemy without detail. The body remembers lessons from childhood. Tuck the chin a little, loosen the jaw, bend what can bend, hold what must hold. Even in dream, technique is compassion. The dream respects this and changes in response, and waking receives a strange confidence that daylight cannot explain. By now, the ancient stories are not whispering at the edges, but speaking plainly through the center. The Greeks are nodding about balance. The monks are reminding us about belonging. The shamans are making space around the fire. The storytellers, who wrote of girls in blue dresses and holes without flaws, are laughing softly at how serious we become when we forget that wonder is not childish. The myths are not asking us to recite them. They are asking us to recognize that their shapes still fit our nights. Every time a fall returns, someone somewhere has a chance to become kinder because of it. Dreams do not correct us like teachers with red pens. They call us like water calls thirst. They do not announce with trumpets. They arrive like weather, and those who know how to read clouds can pack accordingly. To interpret a fall is less about decoding than about listening for the tone hidden inside the wind. Is it the warning tone that hurries the body into shelter? Is it the releasing tone that says the roof is safe and you can sleep in the rain? Is it the summoning tone that says there is work to do below and you are the right person to carry a light? When morning comes after a falling dream, there is almost always a choice that feels small. Small is the right size. The myth works best when it is folded into the ordinary. You put your hand on the rail when you descend the stairs. You answer the message now instead of later. You open a window and let air move through. You say, "I was going to climb higher today, but balancing on this rung is wiser." Or you say, "I have been clinging to a rung that no longer exists." Either way, the day becomes a place where dreams can keep teaching without one more image, and by evening, you have learned enough to need a different lesson than the one you needed last week. There will be a night when the fall returns, and you recognize it the way a sailor recognizes wind by taste, more than by sight. You will know which story is speaking through the drop. You will know whether to listen for melting feathers or for a door in the ground. You will know whether the lesson belongs to caution, to surrender, or to courage. You will still wake with a pulse fast enough to count in your throat, but under the drum you will hear a second rhythm, older, steady. That is the part of you that has fallen 1,000 times and learned that ground and sky are not enemies after all. And so, a question waits at the edge of the bed like a faithful dog with patient eyes. When you fall in your next dream, which ancient will walk with you to the place where you land, and what will you become there that you could not become by standing still? There is a rumor that circulates quietly, whispered from one sleeper to another. You never truly hit the ground in a falling dream. The story says that if you did, you would not wake at all, that the body would mistake dream for death and surrender breath. But like many rumors, it hides as much as it reveals. The truth is softer, stranger. People have landed in dreams, and the world has continued. They have struck the ground and risen again into landscapes that make no sense and all the sense in the world. And those dreams often change the way the dreamer walks through waking life. Falling is usually a rehearsal for fear. The stomach lurches, the heart pounds, and we wake before contact. But what happens when the ground does not refuse us? What happens when the fall completes itself? Those who speak of such dreams describe a shock, yes, but also a kind of threshold. The impact is rarely blood or bone. It is transformation. One dreamer falls from a tower and lands not in ruin, but in a field of tall grass, swaying as if waiting. Another falls through endless sky, only to find the ground soft as a quilt, absorbing the body without harm. A third crashes into stone, but instead of pain, there is light, and the stone splits open like an egg, revealing a passage below. These stories suggest that the ground is not an ending. It is a gate disguised as an end. We spend so much of life fearing impact that we rarely ask what it might give us once we have endured it. Waking teaches us that falls break bones. Dreaming teaches us that falls can break illusions. The impact is often the moment when the dream changes genre. Fear becomes discovery. Despair becomes entry. Endings become corridors into something hidden. Why does the mind invent such continuations? Perhaps it is rehearsal of another kind. We know that life includes endings, chapters that close, relationships that shatter, work that collapses under its own weight. To dream of landing without ruin is to be shown a possibility, that endings are survivable, that ground does not always mean destruction, that the story continues after impact. For the dreamer who wakes from such a vision, the lesson may linger. They face the day's falls, small or large, with a fraction more courage. They have landed before and discovered that landing can mean beginning. There are cultures that recognize this pattern long before modern minds recorded it in journals. In some mythologies, descent always includes a stage of contact. The underworld must be touched, not merely glimpsed in descent. The dreamer must feel soil, stone, or water against them to prove the journey complete. Then, and only then, can they begin the next passage. Falling without landing is warning. Landing within falling is initiation. The two experiences may feel similar in the air, but they carry different weights once the eyes open again. Think of how we use the language of falling in waking life. We say someone fell apart. We say an empire fell. We say a plan fell through. But notice what follows those phrases. A person who fell apart rebuilt. An empire that fell made way for another. A plan that fell through cleared space for what had been waiting. Landing is rarely final. It is transitional. The dream seems to remember this truth and stage it in symbols too strong for waking mind to ignore. Sometimes the ground arrives as water. The dreamer crashes into a lake and the cold shocks them awake, but not before they glimpse fish glowing like lanterns in the deep. Sometimes the ground is forest, branches breaking the fall until the body rests in moss. Sometimes the ground is not ground at all, but a hand, vast and luminous, catching the dreamer with gentleness that makes the heart ache upon waking. Always, the landing has texture. Always, it carries more than fear. There are dreamers who resist. They wake themselves just before impact, unwilling to know what waits below. And there are others who lean in, who allow the ground to rise and accept the lesson. Which kind are you? Perhaps both, at different times in life. Fear is not failure. Readiness has its own seasons. Sometimes the mind knows you are not prepared for the gift of landing, and it spares you until the day you are. That is why some falls recur for years without conclusion, only to one day finish with a contact that feels inevitable. The dream waited until you were ready to receive it, and when you are ready, the ground may surprise you. It may not shatter. It may open. It may carry you somewhere deeper. It may even dissolve, leaving you suspended in mid-air until you realize that falling and flying are only different words for the same surrender. The lesson is not always about control. Sometimes it is about trust. Imagine what it means to carry such a dream into waking life. To walk into a day when you expect collapse and to hear, beneath the fear, a voice whispering that even if collapse comes, there will be a flaw, and that flaw may not be death, but doorway. Imagine what it means to face the end of something, a chapter, a role, a season, and to remember that you once landed in a dream and were not destroyed. Dreams do not erase the reality of pain, but they give us rehearsal space, a place to practice courage when courage feels impossible, and so the rumor fades, replaced by something more mysterious. It is not true that you cannot land in a dream. You can. The truth is stranger. The ground is not what you think. It is not always the end. Sometimes it is the beginning, disguised as an end. Sometimes it is an arm disguised as earth. Sometimes it is silence disguised as stone. Always it has something to say. So when the fall returns tonight, and the ground rises like an old companion, ask softly, will I wake before impact, or will I discover what lies on the other side of landing? And if I do discover it, how will tomorrow look different because of it? Every dream is a passage, but falling dreams carry us across thresholds more vividly than most. The air rushes, the body surrenders, and we know without explanation that we are crossing from one place to another. The sensation itself is the message. Something is shifting, something is loosening, something is no longer what it was. These dreams often come to us when waking life itself trembles between chapters, when the ground we trusted is moving, when the next step is not visible. Think of the first time you left home. whether for a single night or forever. That drop in the chest, that sense of untethering, is not so different from the pull of a falling dream. The mind remembers that leaving one life for another feels like falling through unseen air. The dream stages this truth as theatre: a cliff, a stair, a ladder, a sky. It gives us the fear in concentrated form so that we can taste it safely before living it fully. Many dreamers report falling dreams at times of transition: a student moving into exams, an adult stepping into marriage or parenthood, an elder facing retirement. The unconscious does not speak in calendars. It speaks in gravity. To fall is to lose one world and not yet touch another. The dream knows we can endure this, and it rehearses the descent for us again and again until the waking fall feels survivable. But falling dreams are not always about fear. Sometimes they carry exhilaration. You plunge, yes, but the air is bright, the body is light, and somewhere inside the fear is a thread of joy. In these dreams, falling becomes flight without wings. The ground never comes, and the descent itself feels endless, boundless. To dream this at the moment of a life change is to feel the possibility that uncertainty is not only danger, but adventure. The same sensation that terrifies one night can liberate the next, depending on what the heart needs. Cultures have long known that transitions are dangerous. Old ceremonies often included simulated falls, apprentices lowered into caves, initiates blindfolded and led across edges, seekers sent into darkness, where the floor seemed to vanish. To fall was to be remade. The dream of falling belongs to this same lineage. It is an initiation performed within sleep, reminding us that identity itself is fragile, that selves can shatter and be rebuilt. There are dreams where the fall passes through many layers. First, a fall from the sky, then through the roof of a house, then through floors upon floors until the dreamer lands in a place they did not know existed. These layered descents often arrive when waking life itself holds many changes at once. Relationships shifting, work dissolving, body aging. The dream does not present one fall but several, stacked like pages in a book. Each impact peels away an old self until the dream awakes thinner, lighter, less burdened. Sometimes falling dreams blur into flying dreams, and the line between terror and liberation vanishes. The fall begins with panic, but midway something loosens, arms spread, descent slows, and the fall becomes glide. Dreamers wake from these visions trembling not with fear, but with wonder. What has shifted? Perhaps the mind has rehearsed enough fear to allow trust, and trust transforms falling into flight. It is the same air, the same gravity, but the meaning is different. The dream teaches by showing us how quickly a drop can become a dance. And then there are those who dream of being pushed. A hand unseen, a betrayal felt, a shove that takes the choice away. These dreams often come during times of forced transition, jobs lost, moves required, endings chosen by others. The body registers the truth. You did not step, you were taken. But even here the dream offers rehearsal. It lets us practice the feeling of powerlessness in the safety of sleep, preparing us to face what the day may bring. And sometimes, even after the push, the fall changes mid-air into something chosen. The dream seems to whisper that what begins as theft can become transformation, that what begins as exile can become journey. Falling dreams show us not only that change is inevitable, but that change has many shapes. Some falls feel endless, some brief, some destroy, some liberate, some terrify, some soothe. The variety is the point. The unconscious refuses to let us believe that transitions are one note. They are chords, full of tension, resolution, surprise. The fall is the chord played loudly enough for us to feel it. What should we do with such dreams? Perhaps nothing but listen. They are not puzzles to solve, but experiences to endure. To wake from a falling dream is already to have rehearsed letting go. To carry that rehearsal into the day is enough. The next time a moment feels like collapse, a part of you will remember, I have fallen before, and I woke again. And maybe the deepest secret is this. Falling dreams are not only about us as individuals, they are about the way the universe itself moves. Stars collapse, leaves fall, rivers drop into canyons. Worlds are born from the fall of dust into gravity's embrace. Everything falls, and from falling comes creation. To dream of falling is to remember that we belong to this pattern, that endings and beginnings are made of the same descent. So when the fall returns tonight and you feel the wind rushing past your skin, pause within it if you can. Ask quietly, is this fear or is this flight? Am I being broken or am I being remade? The answer may not arrive in words, but the body will know. The dream of falling is often described as terror. The body lurches, the stomach flips, the heart hammers. But beneath that panic lies a question that has haunted every dreamer. What does it mean to lose control? Falling dreams are rehearsals for this question. They stage the moment when grip loosens, when certainty dissolves, when the illusion of mastery is torn away. And in that rehearsal, they ask us not only how we respond to fear, but how we respond to surrender. In waking life, so much is built around the idea of control. We tighten schedules, we grasp for outcomes, we make lists and draw maps and clutch rails. But at night, the unconscious remembers what the conscious mind forgets. Control is a temporary story. Gravity is patient. Life itself is a series of balances that cannot last forever. Sooner or later, every hand slips, every rung breaks, every path leads to an edge. The dream of falling reminds us of this in language we cannot ignore. It pulls us into freefall, strips us of ground and asks, who are you when there is nothing left to hold? Some dreamers resist. They thrash, they reach, they wake gasping before the ground arrives. For them, surrender feels like annihilation, and the dream honors that fear by ending abruptly. Others report something stranger. Midway through the fall, they give up fighting. They let arms spread, let breath soften, let the descent carry them. And then something shifts. The fall slows, or it becomes flight, or the terror drains into a serenity too profound to describe. The dream does not always reward surrender with safety, but it often rewards it with transformation. Perhaps this is the deeper meaning of these dreams. Falling is the mind's rehearsal for all the moments when control is not possible. Illness, loss, grief, endings we did not choose. The dream asks us to practice letting go, not to celebrate helplessness, but to discover the strength that waits behind it. To surrender is not to give up living. It is to admit that life moves with currents larger than willpower. And in that admission, something paradoxical appears, a kind of freedom. History is filled with echoes of this lesson. Mystics spoke of falling into God, a surrender of ego that opened into vastness. Lovers spoke of falling in love, a leap into trust that reshaped two lives. Even sleep itself is described as falling, a nightly surrender of consciousness into the unknown. Our language carries this wisdom quietly, that falling can be gift as well as danger, entry as well as exile. There are falling dreams where the ground never comes. The descent itself is endless, and though fear begins the journey, calm often ends it. These dreams whisper that control is not the only way to survive. Sometimes survival is trust in the process, even when there is no visible flaw. Other times, the ground comes swiftly, a jarring impact that teaches we cannot always decide when change will strike. In both cases, the lesson is the same. Resistance exhausts, surrender transforms. Consider the way a leaf falls. It does not fight the wind. It turns, it spins, it accepts the invisible hand that carries it. In the same way, some dreamers wake from falling, with a memory not of terror, but of grace, as though they too had been leaves carried by something wiser than themselves. These are not passive souls. They live actively, make choices, pursue goals. But when the edge comes, they carry with them a knowledge that others do not. That there is more strength in release than in clinging, and still, The dream does not lecture. It does not demand surrender. It lets us try both, panic and release, clutching and letting go, and shows us the difference in feeling. Each dream is a rehearsal, each night a stage where we can practice what waking will one day require. No one escapes gravity. No one escapes endings. The only choice is how we fall. When you dream of falling again, you may wake shaking, or you may wake strangely peaceful. Either way, the dream has worked its lesson. It has placed you on the edge and asked you to choose. And each time, the choice shapes you, even if you forget the details. So perhaps the deepest mystery is not whether the dream warns or consoles, but whether it is slowly teaching us the art of surrender. And if it is, then the next question waits, soft and patient. When the real falls of waking life come, will you fight against the air, or will you open your arms to the wind? There are falling dreams that have an ending. The ground rises, the body wakes, the fear dissolves. But there are others, rarer and stranger, where the ground never arrives. You fall and fall and fall, through skies that stretch into forever. Clouds peel away. Darkness turns to light, then back to darkness. Time becomes elastic, a thread stretched beyond recognition. And when you wake from such a dream, it is not terror that lingers most strongly, but awe, the memory that you were suspended in infinity. What does it mean to fall without end? Why would the mind stage such a scene when it could just as easily create a cliff or a crash? Perhaps it is because there are moments in life when we feel precisely this, caught between what has ended and what has not begun, floating, drifting, with no ground to catch us and no sky to return us. The endless fall mirrors these states of limbo, giving them form, sensation, narrative. It makes the invisible suspension visible. For some, the endless fall is frightening. To drop without destination is to feel powerless. To fall forever is to never arrive, never land, never resolve. These dreamers wake with a sense of despair, of being trapped in a story without conclusion. But for others, the endless fall is liberating. To never land is to never be broken. To never stop is to never be trapped. They wake not with fear, but with a quiet exhilaration, as though they had glimpsed eternity and found it gentle. Science shrugs at such dreams. They cannot be measured, but myths understand them well. In some traditions, the endless fall is a vision of infinity itself, a brush with the eternal. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes souls falling through luminous tunnels, carried toward rebirth. Ancient shamans spoke of bottomless caves, descents that had no floor, journeys meant not to end but to expand. Even in modern stories, the motif persists, characters tumbling through portals, through wormholes, through dreamscapes where no ground exists, only motion. The human imagination recognizes something in the image of endless falling, a truth too vast to capture in words, but easy to feel in the stomach and chest. The endless fall may also be a rehearsal for mystery itself. Our lives are full of questions without answers, doors without keys. The mind, unwilling to leave these spaces empty, creates a dream where the very act of not knowing is embodied. To fall forever is to live inside uncertainty, to practice being at peace with the unresolved. Perhaps the dream knows that waking life will often demand this of us, and it gives us practice while the body rests. There are those who say the endless fall is the closest thing the mind can simulate to infinity. To experience no ground, no end, no limit, is to brush against what eternity might feel like. It is not a concept, but a sensation. A heart racing, a breath quickening, a body suspended. The dream becomes a kind of lesson. This is how infinity feels, not as a number or a timeline, but as a drop without end. And then there is the possibility that the endless fall is not about fear or eternity at all, but about expansion. In these dreams, the body falls, but the self begins to spread. The edges of identity blur, boundaries dissolve, and the dreamer feels less like a person and more like a point of awareness floating in vastness. They wake with a memory not of falling, but of merging into sky, into stars, into something greater than themselves. Such dreams are rare, but those who have them often carry the feeling for years, unable to describe it fully, but certain it was important. Perhaps the endless fall is the mind's way of showing us that there are truths larger than comprehension. We cannot map infinity, but we can feel it. We cannot chart the unknown, but we can taste its shape in the language of dreams. To fall forever is to be reminded that the universe is wide, that life is short, and that certainty is only a small island in an endless sea. And so the dream leaves us with an image both terrifying and beautiful. Ourselves, suspended in descent, never arriving, never ending. It is not a failure of the dream to resolve. It is the point, to live with mystery, to rest inside infinity, to accept that not all stories close, and not all journeys need a destination. So tonight, if the fall comes and does not stop, if the air never gives way to earth, if the descent stretches longer than breath can measure, remember this: you are not trapped. You are expanding. You are rehearsing eternity. And perhaps the question the dream asks most softly is this: if you could fall forever, would you learn at last that ground was never the point? Some dreams visit once and vanish, like strangers who pass you in a train station, faces you will never see again. But falling dreams are rarely like that. They return, sometimes across months, sometimes across years, sometimes across a lifetime. They change their costumes. One night a stairwell, another night a cliff, another night a sky that suddenly opens beneath your feet. But the sensation is the same. The drop, the surrender, the lurch of the heart. Why does the dream of falling return so faithfully? What does it want that one visit cannot give? Perhaps the simplest answer is that the fall is a teacher, and teachers do not stop after one lesson. The unconscious knows that we need rehearsal more than revelation. To dream of falling again and again is to practice letting go in different keys, in different seasons of life. As a child, the fall may teach about separation, leaving a parent's arms, walking into school, sleeping alone in a bed that feels too big. As an adult, the fall may return when work teeters, when love falters, when health shifts. As age deepens, the fall may come as rehearsal for the greatest descent of all, the drop into death, which may itself be only another transformation. But there is another reason the fall repeats, because we do not always listen. A single dream may be dismissed. We wake, shake our head, laugh at our bodies twitch, pour coffee, forget. The unconscious notices. It does not scold. It simply tries again. Night after night, year after year, the fall repeats until something changes, until we pause, until we ask not, what is wrong with me, but what is this dream saying to me? The repetition is patience, not punishment. It is the dream's way of insisting gently that there is a message we have not finished receiving. And what is that message? It may be different each time. Sometimes the dream repeats because life repeats, because we are caught in patterns of fear or control, because we grip ladders that are breaking, because we refuse to admit that change has already arrived. The fall returns to remind us of gravity, the truth that clinging cannot save us, that letting go may. Other times, the dream repeats because the soul itself has themes, lessons that take decades to absorb. Falling is one of those themes, too large to be given all at once. It must be offered in installments, carried across seasons, absorbed little by little until it becomes part of the body's wisdom. Think of how often we say, "I keep having the same dream." We say it with frustration, but perhaps we should say it with reverence. A recurring dream is persistence of meaning. It is the unconscious refusing to abandon us, repeating the story until we learn to tell it ourselves. Falling is among the most common recurring dreams because its meaning is among the most universal: surrender, change, mortality, trust. The dream repeats because the lesson is inexhaustible. There are dreamers who report that their falling dreams evolve. As children, they woke screaming before impact. As young adults, they woke gasping but curious. Later, the same fall carried them into flight, into water, into light. The recurrence was not static. It was a dialogue. The dream adjusted as the dreamer grew. Each repetition was both the same and different. A reminder that we are never finished with the work of surrender, and there are those who find that the recurring fall is tied to cycles in their lives. Each time they face a new beginning, the fall returns. Each time they reach the edge of something, the drop arrives. It becomes not a curse, but a signal. When the dream of falling comes, they know change is near. They begin to treat the recurrence as guidance, as weather. The fall came again last night, they say, so something is shifting. In this way, the recurring dream becomes an ally, but the recurrence also raises a haunting possibility. What if the dream is not only ours? What if the fall repeats not just in individual lives, but across humanity, echoing in millions of sleepers night after night? A collective rehearsal, a species-wide reminder that all of us live on edges, all of us carry fears, all of us will fall someday in ways we cannot prevent. Perhaps the recurrence is communal. Perhaps we dream it together so that we never forget we belong to one another in descent as well as in ascent. Still, the recurrence carries a deeper mystery. Some people say their falling dream stops once they face a certain truth in waking life. They let go of a failing relationship. They accept an ending they had denied. They forgive themselves for something old. And after that, the falling dreams vanish. As if the unconscious, satisfied that the message has been heard, closes the book and places it back on the shelf. Silence replaces dissent. The dream has done its work. Others report the opposite. That the falling dreams continue until the very end of life. They come softer, calmer, less violent. The dreamer grows used to them, even welcomes them. In their last years, the fall no longer feels like fear. It feels like homecoming. They speak of it not as warning, but as preparation. Perhaps for some, the recurrence is a lifelong companion, the dream staying faithful until the final descent is taken for real. And so we return to the question, why does the dream of falling repeat? The answer may be simple, because falling itself is endless. We fall into love, into sleep, into silence, into death, into mystery. We are always falling, one way or another, from one stage into the next. To dream of falling again and again is only to mirror what life itself does, what existence itself does. Gravity is never finished, neither is the dream, so the next time the fall returns, do not dismiss it as just another nightmare. Ask it gently, what part of me are you rehearsing now? What edge am I standing on without admitting it? What ground is rising that I cannot see? The dream will not answer in words. It will answer in the way your chest feels, in the way your day shifts after waking, in the way you notice the fragility of balance. That is its language. And maybe the softest question it leaves behind is this. If the dream comes again tomorrow, and the night after, and the year after, will you see it as failure to stop? Or will you see it as a companion walking beside you, reminding you that surrender is not learned once, but lived every day? There are many reasons we dream of falling. Nerves misfiring, fears rehearsed, transitions symbolized. But among all these meanings lies one that most quietly resists being spoken. The dream of falling as rehearsal for death itself. For what is death, if not the ultimate letting go? The final surrender of control, the slip of the hand, the release of the breath. Falling dreams may be the unconscious way of preparing us, night after night, for the last descent every life must take. No one remembers their first breath, and no one remembers the first sleep they ever surrendered to. But many remember their first falling dream. The heart pounding, the gasp for air, the sudden shock of waking. It feels like a brush with mortality even in childhood. And perhaps it is. Children, new to the world, must learn that life includes endings. That security is not unbroken. The falling dream teaches this gently, frightening, but survivable. It gives the child a story about death that does not kill. As years pass, the falling dream changes. In youth, it warns against recklessness. In adulthood, it reflects anxieties of control. In age, it often softens. The endless panic begins to quiet. The fall is slower, the air kinder, the landing more forgiving. Some who dream of falling late in life speak not of terror, but of calm acceptance, as though the body itself is rehearsing the peace of letting go. The unconscious knows what the conscious mind resists, that one day we must fall into the unknown, and that it need not be only terror. Cultures across the world have spoken of death as a fall. The Greeks imagined souls descending into Hades, crossing rivers that flowed underground. Norse tales spoke of the great tree Yggdrasil, where those who died in battle fell into halls beyond halls. Christian scripture described the fall from grace, and later, the fall into hell or the fall into heaven's embrace. Even in modern language, we say to fall asleep as a gentle cousin to pass away. Falling and dying have always shared a rhythm. The dream of falling is part of that rhythm, a nightly reminder that mortality hums beneath every breath. And still, there is mercy in these dreams. They allow us to feel death without dying. They give us practice in surrender, rehearsal in release. Each time we wake, we learn that the fall can be survived in its smaller forms. The unconscious is like a careful teacher who introduces the lesson again and again, not to terrify, but to prepare. It whispers, "One day you will fall and not wake in this bed, but even then, perhaps you will wake somewhere else. Perhaps falling is not an ending but a passage." This idea has haunted mystics for centuries. They wrote of death as a return, a drop, into the vastness that bore us. Falling dreams may be echoes of this intuition. The dream strips away ground and sky, tears away illusions of control, and leaves us suspended in the raw experience of surrender. To wake from such a dream is to return to life with a secret, that dying may not be as strange as we fear, that we have already practiced it many times in sleep. There are those who speak of near-death experiences with language strikingly close to falling dreams. They describe tunnels, descents, sudden releases, the sense of dropping away from the body. They describe the same panic that transforms, midway, into peace. It is as if falling dreams and death itself are rehearsals of each other, teaching us across thresholds that the unknown can hold more than terror. And perhaps this is why some falling dreams end not in waking, but in landscapes luminous and serene. A fall through sky lands in a meadow bathed in strange light. A drop from a building ends in a pool where stars ripple on the surface. A fall into darkness continues until the dreamer is not afraid, and then the dream shifts into something vast and still. These are not nightmares. They are promises disguised as fear, reminders that even endings may carry beauty. So what do we do with this? Perhaps nothing more than notice. The next time you wake from a fall, instead of shaking it away, pause. Feel what it taught you. Ask whether it was only fear, or whether it carried a thread of peace hidden in its plunge. Ask whether it was reminding you that control is temporary, that life is finite, that death is not a failure, but a horizon. We fear falling because we fear the end. But if dreams are teachers, then perhaps they are teaching us that the end is only another form of falling, and that falling itself is not only terror, it is transformation. And maybe the most mysterious question is this: when the final fall comes, will it feel like the dreams we have been given all along? Will the body tremble, the heart race, the breath catch, only for us to discover on the other side that the ground is not destruction, but light? Falling is not only a dream of the night, it is a dream that cultures have carried into daylight, painting it, writing it, singing it, staging it again and again across centuries. The image of descent seems to haunt every imagination. Perhaps because the experience is so universal, perhaps because its meaning is so vast, Artists and storytellers have never stopped returning to the fall. To dream of falling is to share a vision with poets and painters long gone, with musicians and filmmakers alive today, with every hand that has tried to capture the sensation of surrender in a medium of choice. In ancient epics, falling was always dramatic. Heroes plunged from towers, warriors tumbled from horses, kings fell from grace. The descent was not a detail, but a climax. The moment when fate revealed itself. The Greeks sculpted figures mid-tumble, bodies twisted in marble to capture gravity in stillness. Medieval illuminations painted angels plummeting in flames. Renaissance canvases froze Icarus forever, half submerged in the sea, legs still kicking, as the world above him went about its business. The fall was tragedy, but also spectacle. To record it was to remind humanity that even the mighty are subject to gravity. Literature carried the image further. Poets wrote of falls both physical and metaphorical. To fall from grace, to fall in love, to fall into despair. Language itself turned descent into metaphor. Shakespeare spoke of vaulting ambition, which o'erleaps itself and falls. Milton wrote of Lucifer's plunge, the greatest fall in Western poetry. A descent so powerful, it shook creation. Later writers imagined falling not only as ruin, but as mystery. Alice down the rabbit hole, tumbling into nonsense that turned into wonder. Falling in stories became the doorway to other worlds. Music has never let go of the image either. Ballads sang of falling leaves, falling kingdoms, falling hearts. Composers wrote symphonies where notes cascaded downward, imitating the rush of descent. In popular songs today, to fall is almost always to love, to surrender willingly, to emotions stronger than reason. The word no longer frightens as it once did. It seduces. We are drawn to the romance of the fall as much as we are to its terror. And cinema, the art of motion, loves the fall most of all. The first films ever made experimented with gravity. Objects dropped, bodies tumbling in slapstick comedy. Later, the fall became dramatic centerpiece. The hero letting go of the ledge, the villain cast into the abyss, the slow-motion plunge that suspends time itself. Audiences hold their breath, not because they do not know the outcome, but because the sensation is universal. We have all felt it in dreams. The screen only makes visible what the unconscious already knows. Why does culture return to this image again and again? Perhaps because falling is the perfect symbol for life itself. We are all in motion, carried forward whether we choose it or not. We are all at risk of sudden change, of collapse, of endings. To portray falling is to portray vulnerability, the truth that control is fleeting. And yet, falling is also beauty. Bodies twisting in air, leaves spiraling in autumn, raindrops dropping from clouds. It is destruction and grace at once. Artists cannot resist it because it mirrors existence itself, fragile, fleeting, full of meaning. Dreams and art speak to one another here. The dream of falling gives artists their subject. The art of falling feeds back into dreams, teaching imaginations what to expect. A child who sees a film of someone plummeting may later dream of falling from a cliff. An adult who reads of Lucifer's fall may later dream of their own exile. Culture does not merely record dreams, it shapes them, amplifies them, gives them costumes and settings. When we fall in sleep, we sometimes fall through the images culture has prepared for us. But art also gives falling meaning. A nightmare alone may terrify. A painting of a fall may transform that terror into contemplation. A song about falling in love may soften the fear into sweetness. Culture becomes the interpreter of the dream, helping us carry what would otherwise be unbearable. Without art, the fall would be only panic. With art, it becomes metaphor, symbol, story, even beauty. And perhaps this is why falling remains one of the most enduring images across all media, because it is too much to hold alone. The dreamer needs the artist, The artist needs the dreamer. Together they keep the image alive, generation after generation, each fall reminding us of what we cannot escape. That to live is to surrender, that gravity is always waiting, that endings can also be beginnings. So the next time you see a painting of a tumbling figure, or hear a lyric about falling, or watch a character drop into slow-motion silence on a screen, remember that you are not just witnessing entertainment. You are watching the reflection of your own dream, the echo of humanity's shared descent. And maybe the quiet question it leaves behind is this: if art and dream both keep teaching us the meaning of falling, how many times will we need to hear the lesson before we truly learn to let go? Most dreams feel private, tucked inside the boundaries of one life. But the dream of falling is different. It belongs not only to the individual, but to the species. Night after night, in every country, across every language, millions of sleepers drop through the same invisible air. They wake with the same gasp, the same heartbeat racing in the dark. It is as if humanity shares one dream, one image, one sensation: the fall. Why should this be so? Why should the dream of falling recur so faithfully across cultures and centuries? Perhaps because falling is the perfect metaphor for collective fear. Societies fall just as people do. Empires collapse, markets crash, towers topple, faiths falter. The ground that seemed stable reveals itself as fragile, and the descent begins. The unconscious, aware of this, shapes dreams that echo not just personal anxieties, but cultural ones. To dream of falling may be to carry the weight of a community's dread. History gives us endless examples. During wars, countless people reported nightmares of falling bombs and collapsing buildings. During economic depressions, dream journals filled with accounts of falling from ladders, from rooftops, from broken bridges. During plagues, sleepers spoke of tumbling through endless darkness, as if the body itself were falling toward death. The falling dream is not only a mirror of individual fear, but a chorus of collective memory. It is how the species processes collapse. But there is another side to this. Just as individuals sometimes find release in surrendering to the fall, cultures, too, can find renewal in collapse. Old systems give way, and new ones grow in their place. Falling dreams may be the mind's rehearsal for not only personal death, but cultural death, reminding us that endings make space for beginnings. To fall together is terrifying, but it is also unifying. The dream of falling may remind us that we are not alone in fear, that we fall as one. Consider how myths tell not just of individual falls, but of cosmic ones. The fall of Lucifer was not his alone. It altered the universe. The fall of Atlantis carried an entire civilization into the Sea. The fall of the Tower of Babel was the fall of collective pride, scattering languages across the earth. These stories echo what dreams tell us, that sometimes it is not one person who falls, but all. To dream of falling may be to remember that we are part of something larger, that our descent is shared. And perhaps this is why falling dreams are so often described as vast. The scale feels cosmic. We do not fall from a chair, we fall from the sky. We do not trip on a stone, we plunge through infinity. The unconscious magnifies the image because it is carrying not only our private fear, but humanity's ancient anxiety, the fear that everything built can collapse, that everything held can be lost, that nothing is secure forever. Even in these dreams, beauty sometimes enters. The fall is shared, but so is the survival. Dreamers report seeing others falling beside them. Strangers, friends, entire crowds suspended together in descent. They wake not only with fear, but with a strange sense of kinship. Perhaps this is the dream's deepest gift, the reminder that, while we all fall, we never fall alone. And so the dream of falling belongs both to the smallest child and the greatest empire. It whispers of fragility, of endings, of mortality, but it also whispers of togetherness. When you wake gasping in the night, remember that someone across the world woke in the same moment with the same gasp. The dream is communal. The lesson is shared. Maybe this is why the falling dream returns with such insistence, because it carries a truth we must keep remembering. That collapse is not an accident, but part of life. That fear is not a flaw, but a bond. That descent is not only doom, but the beginning of something else. And so, when the dream returns tonight, when you feel yourself dropping through the dark alongside countless unseen others, pause if you can. Listen for the chorus hidden in the wind. The softest mystery the dream may leave is this: if all of us fall together, what might we build from the place where we land? If you listen carefully, you will notice that every falling dream has a threshold inside it, a crossing where fear becomes something else. At first there is panic. The stomach tightens, the body jerks, the pulse beats too quickly. But then, somewhere in the descent, a change occurs. Sometimes it is subtle, sometimes dramatic, but always present. The dreamer realizes that the fall is not only collapse, it is passage. It is the moment when the self breaks open, when the old layers crack and something new waits to emerge. Think of how many myths treat descent as initiation. Heroes in ancient epics do not rise before they fall. They are cast into caves, lowered into the underworld, swallowed by whales, carried down rivers into shadow. Their transformations begin not in triumph, but in loss of footing. It is only when they surrender to the downward path that their journeys shift, their identities fracture, their souls prepare for change. Our dreams carry the same pattern. They place us in free fall, not only to frighten us, but to shape us. Falling is the moment when the old self shatters so the new self can arrive. In the dream, this threshold often takes symbolic form, a fall through the sky that becomes a fall into water, and from water into light, a fall that begins in terror and ends in laughter. A fall that feels endless until it transforms into floating. Each shift is a reminder. Transformation hides inside surrender. The threshold between fear and renewal is the air rushing past your ears. Psychologists have often said that falling dreams reflect insecurity, instability, loss of control. But there is another reading, older and perhaps deeper, that instability is the doorway through which growth enters. When you lose your footing, you are forced to change. When the ground breaks, you are carried to new terrain. Falling in dreams stages this truth again and again. We cannot transform while clinging to what no longer holds us. We transform only in descent. Some dreamers report that their falling dreams always happen before major life shifts. A student before graduation, a worker before a career change, a parent before the birth of a child. The dream anticipates what the conscious mind resists. It says, "You are about to cross a threshold. You will feel as though you are falling. But this is how new chapters begin." Those who remember such dreams often look back with awe. The fall was not a warning of doom, but an initiation into change. Others describe more mystical versions. In their dreams, the fall breaks their body into light or scatters them into fragments that then reassemble. They wake shaken, but also strangely expanded, as though the dream showed them that identity is not fixed. We can dissolve and reform. We can lose everything and still be something. We can fall apart and still exist. The threshold is not the end of being, but the rebirth of being in another shape. Cultures have always known this. In rituals across the world, initiates are symbolically cast down. They are stripped of names, of roles, of clothes, sometimes even buried in mock graves. They fall into death before rising into adulthood, priesthood, kingship. The descent is the doorway. Dreams, without ceremony, without ritual masters, perform the same task for us in private. They give us the fall as rehearsal for transformation, night after night, until we remember that falling is not only loss, but passage. And what of the moments when the fall never ends? Perhaps those are not failures of the dream, but expansions of it. Endless descent can be endless transformation, a reminder that we are always in process, never complete. To fall without ground is to live without final identity, always remaking ourselves, always growing into something else. The dream shows this truth in the only way it can, an infinite drop. When you wake from such a dream, you may still feel the panic, the pounding chest, the sweat on the skin. But listen beneath the fear. There is often another note, quieter but stronger. It is the feeling that something is changing inside you, that you are different from the person who closed their eyes. The dream has cracked something open. And though you may not know what, the change has already begun. Transformation rarely feels gentle. In waking life, change often feels like falling too, into grief, into love, into uncertainty, into the unknown. But dreams remind us that the fall itself is the threshold. That moment of suspension, of surrender, of loss of control, is where the new self waits. Falling is not the enemy of growth, it is its herald. So perhaps the question is not why we dream of falling, but why we fear it so much. If the dream is a threshold, then the fear is natural, but it is not the whole story. The fall is also a passage, and passages are not punishments, they are invitations. To fall in a dream is to be invited into transformation, even if you do not recognize it at first. And when the dream returns tonight, when the drop pulls you from the edge, when your body jerks and your breath catches, try to remember, this is not only terror, this is threshold. Something is breaking open inside you. Something is waiting to emerge. And maybe the softest mystery the dream leaves is this. When the threshold comes in waking life, will you recognize it as the same descent you have already practiced so many times in sleep? Every falling dream carries fear, but beneath the fear, there is always silence. A vast, resonant silence that the rush of air cannot cover. That silence is the voice of mystery. And perhaps the true purpose of falling dreams is not to terrify us, but to invite us into that mystery. For falling is not only about danger or death, nor even about transformation alone. Falling is the image of what cannot be fully explained, the sensation of what cannot be fully held. When you tumble through the dream, you know without anyone telling you that you are no longer in control. And in that instant, something ancient unfolds inside you. The realization that life itself is mystery. Control was always a surface story. Beneath it lies a depth without bottom. Falling dreams do not reveal that mystery by explaining it. They reveal it by immersing us in it. To fall is to be inside a question too large for answers. Cultures have often understood falling this way. Shamans spoke of descents into underworlds not as punishments, but as journeys into hidden knowledge. Mystics described the fall into God as surrender into a presence beyond comprehension. Poets compared falling in love to being carried into a mystery greater than reason. The image of falling, in all these forms, points not to solutions, but to encounters. To fall is to meet what cannot be solved, what can only be lived. In dreams, this encounter takes visceral form. You do not analyze while falling. You do not calculate, you feel. The air on your skin, the tug in your stomach, the racing of your pulse. Each sensation is direct, undeniable, unexplainable. It strips away the comfort of intellect and leaves you raw before the unknown. That rawness is the gift, for when you wake, you carry the memory that life too is raw, that beneath every plan and every certainty lies the same vast silence. This is why falling dreams so often linger, not because of the fear alone, but because of the awe. You wake with questions trembling at the edge of thought. What was I falling into? Where would I have landed if I had not woken? Why did it feel both terrifying and beautiful? These questions are not meant to be answered in daylight. They are meant to follow you like echoes, to remind you that the mystery remains, that the dream has opened a door that never fully closes. And maybe this is the reason falling dreams resist interpretation. Psychologists offer theories: fear of failure, loss of control, anxiety about change. These are not wrong, but they are not enough. They explain the surface, not the depth. The dream of falling is not a riddle to solve, it is a mystery to inhabit. To try to decode it fully is to miss its essence, the way dissecting a song misses its music. Falling dreams do not want to be solved, they want to be felt. There are moments in waking life when the same sensation arrives. Standing at the edge of a great decision, you feel the stomach drop. Watching someone you love walk away, you feel the air rush inside you. Facing a future you cannot predict, you feel as though the floor has given way. These are not accidents. They are the same dream replayed in daylight. Falling belongs to both worlds, the sleeping and the waking, because mystery belongs to both. The great paradox is that falling dreams frighten us precisely because they free us. For one brief moment, the world's illusions of control vanish, and we are left with nothing but awareness. Nothing to hold, nothing to stand on, nothing to claim as certain. Only the vastness, only the descent, only the mystery. And in that mystery, something ancient whispers, this is what it means to be alive. Not to know, but to feel. Not to control, but to surrender. Not to stand forever on solid ground, but to learn how to fall with grace. Some dreamers find, after many years of falling, that their dreams begin to shift. The terror remains at first, but then the body learns a new response. Instead of thrashing, they begin to spread their arms. Instead of gasping, they begin to breathe. Instead of fighting, they begin to listen. And in that listening, the fall changes. It becomes lighter, wider, deeper, more serene. The mystery does not resolve, but the relationship with it changes. Fear becomes awe, panic becomes reverence. The dream awakes, not shaken but quiet, touched by something beyond words. Perhaps this is the true destination of falling dreams. Not the ground, not the impact, but the silence inside the descent. The place where questions replace answers, where awe replaces certainty, where life reveals itself not as a puzzle to master but as a wonder to inhabit. To fall is to enter mystery, and to return from the fall is to remember that mystery still surrounds us. So tonight, if you find yourself tumbling again, feel the silence between the rushes of air. Listen to the mystery carried in that silence. It may not tell you where you will land, it may not tell you why you are falling, but it will tell you something even deeper. That the fall itself is sacred, that the unknown itself is holy, that mystery itself is the ground on which you always already stand. And perhaps the softest question the dream leaves behind is this: if falling is the invitation into mystery, will you accept it when it comes? Not only in sleep, but in the waking moments when life pulls the ground from beneath your feet. From the first gasp of childhood to the last breath of age, falling follows us. In daylight it hums in language. We fall in love, fall from grace, fall asleep, fall ill, fall apart. In night it hums in images, cliffs breaking beneath our feet, ladders dissolving, skies opening, air rushing past our ears. To fall is to be human. To dream of falling is to remember this truth in the most intimate theatre we have, our own sleeping mind. Over these nights of exploration, we have walked through the many faces of the fall. We have seen Icarus with his wings of wax melting into sea foam. We have seen angels hurled from heaven, shamans lowered into glowing caverns, lovers tumbling into mysteries larger than reason. We have heard cultures sing of falls that destroyed and falls that remade, of descents that warned and descents that transformed. We have learned that the dream of falling carries not one meaning but 1,000, each shaped by the season of life in which it comes. Falling dreams remind us of fear. They pull us into panic, strip away control, and let us taste what it means to be powerless. But they also remind us of surrender. They show us that release can feel like freedom, that letting go can open doors no grip can hold. They remind us of transformation. To fall is to pass through thresholds, to dissolve and reform, to leave oneself behind so another can emerge. They remind us of mortality. The final fall waits for all of us, and each dream of descent is rehearsal for that last horizon. They remind us of culture, of art, of history, of the way humanity has never stopped telling stories of falls, both literal and symbolic. And they remind us of mystery, the silence inside the rush, the awe beneath the fear, the question larger than any answer. What does it mean then that we all share this dream, that in the dark, no matter our age or nation, we tumble through the same invisible air? Perhaps it means we are bound not only by waking life, but by sleeping life as well. Perhaps it means that to be human is to be a creature of descent as well as ascent. Perhaps it means that falling is not a flaw in the fabric of existence, but part of its design. The fall teaches us that certainty is fragile. The ground we trust can vanish. The walls we build can crumble. The roles we cling to can dissolve. But it also teaches us that endings are not always destruction. Sometimes they are doorways. Sometimes they are thresholds. Sometimes they are beginnings in disguise. The dream strips away ground not to leave us empty, but to remind us that emptiness is not the end. And maybe this is the greatest gift of falling dreams, that they remind us of resilience. We wake from them trembling, sweating, heart pounding, and then we rise. We walk into daylight. We continue. The dream rehearses collapse, but waking rehearses survival. Together they teach us that no fall is final until we stop moving. So tonight, when you close your eyes and the dream comes again, remember that you are not alone. Millions of others tumble beside you. Myths tumble with you. Cultures tumble with you. Even stars fall, collapsing into themselves, birthing light from their own descent. Falling is not your nightmare alone. It is the language of the universe, itself. And when you wake, hold the dream gently. Do not dismiss it as a spasm. Do not fear it as a curse. Let it be what it has always been. An invitation to feel the mystery, to accept the threshold, to honor the fragility, to practice the surrender. Falling is not only what ends us, it is also what remakes us. As we close this journey together, I want to thank you. Thank you for listening, for drifting with me through the skies of myth and memory, through cultures and centuries, through the intimate theater of your own sleeping mind. Thank you for allowing me to keep you company in this little pocket of calm carved out of a noisy universe. If these gentle explorations bring you peace or spark your wonder, consider subscribing to the channel. Your presence, your quiet support, is the greatest encouragement to continue weaving these stories for nights to come. And to those already here, part of this small constellation of listeners scattered across the spinning earth, I am deeply grateful. You are proof that even in falling we can find connection. So let us end where the dream always begins, with a question, perhaps the softest of them all. When the ground rises to meet you in dream or in life, will you see it as ending? Or will you recognize it as the beginning you have been waiting for all along? Good night, dreamer. Sleep well. And if the fall comes, tonight may it carry you not into fear but into wonder,